Hello everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today I'm joined by my absolute ape of a co-host, Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about Monkey Man, Dev Patel's directorial debut, a movie that we have really been looking forward to. And we saw it in theaters.
Yes.
Thank the Lord, aka
Thank
Jordan Peele.
God that this didn't go to Netflix as initially intended.
Yes, and we've not seen it, but of course if you have seen Monkey Man as well, or any of the movies recently or coming up, it would be hard to have seen the movies coming up, but you will eventually.
Yeah.
You can join our Discord and leave comments and subscribe to the channel, like the video, Tanner. Monkey Man.
Yeah, Tucker. So as you said, we were really looking forward to Monkey Man, basically from when that first trailer dropped.
Well, absolutely, because we hadn't heard of it up to that point. We're
exactly.
Like,
and this is obviously a big passion project coming from Dev Patel, star, director, producer here,
and story by.
I
don't think he wrote it, but he came up with the story for it.
And it's really fucking good. I really, really enjoyed Monkey Man. I think it offers something different, which I think I want to get into, than what the trailers initially promised. I think
that's true.
The trailers are very much like, hey, it's just Indian John Wick.
Yeah.
And it is different than that, and I enjoy that about it. I enjoy that it sort of gives you the Indian John Wick, this high-octane modern action, very slick, very, very stylized, very choreographed. While also, Dev Patel also offers up something very interesting creatively, I feel.
No, I think this is a good movie, and I think it's a really impressive directorial debut. One thing about it is it does feel very focused. The cinematography, the lighting, the choreography, everything I think comes together very well, and you can feel, like, I'm surprised that this is a directorial debut.
I know, yeah.
Because I was just like, wow, that's interesting shot composition, and the editing back and forth. I'm like, they put this together really damn well. Also, they have a long time to do it because it was filmed quite a few years ago and yada, yada, yada. But I do think that this is a little bit underneath my expectations because I think the pacing is kind of weird. I think it loses a lot of energy in the middle third of the movie. And I also think that it's not the greatest from a writing perspective. The story, I think, is good on face value, but there's not a lot of dialogue, frankly, in this movie. The characters aren't particularly fleshed out, and especially not the side characters or the villains. I think a lot of things kind of feel one note, and especially in an almost 2-hour-long runtime, I was expecting a little bit more to be drilled on in who these characters are, and we get their motivations, but that's kind of it. This is it's a very focused movie, but with a normal length runtime, I was expecting a little bit more out of the character work, especially because this movie isn't as solely action as the trailers were selling, as you were saying.
Yes.
And so in the moments that aren't action, I was expecting to be really engaged by the writing and character work, but I felt that fell a bit flat. Yeah. And so when it wasn't action, I was a little bit disengaged from it.
Sure. No, and Tucker, I get that. I think that's probably something that a lot of people are going to be feeling about this, is that, obviously the selling point is the high-octane action, and this film delivers on that front, but for a lot of it, you're right, it is a bit more, what I feel I really enjoy about this film is it's about the process of this guy getting to this point. Yeah. Because he isn't a John Wick figure where he's like the best assassin in the world.
No one knows about him. I mean, he's a fighter, but no one's familiar with him as a name or as a threat.
Yeah, and so he's like, I like how you come to understand that basically every aspect of what this unnamed character does.
He is unnamed? I'm gonna look on the cast list.
The name he gives to people is Bobby, but that's
true.
Clearly just from
that's definitely a lie. Yeah.
From the bleach bottles that he uses.
But he's called Kid on the cast list.
So from that standpoint, he does all these things, and I like that as the movie progresses, you understand that they are all feeding into basically his plan to the story of the film is that he grew up in a rural village that was sort of ransacked and destroyed, and all the villagers were killed by the Indian police, the local Indian government, to make room for a holy site /
commune,
sweatshop, factory, whatever. That is sort of under the purview of this religious celebrity, I guess. Could you pull up his name as well, Tucker?
Yeah, I think it's Shakti.
Shakti, and then the police chief's name is
Singh.
Singh. Yeah. Those are basically like the baddies up top that we have to eliminate. And so he is going through this step-by-step process of training himself getting to a position where he can have access to them, that being this king hotel and sort of debauchery factory, if you want to call it that. There's drugs, there's prostitution, human trafficking.
There's everything you want.
Everything bad on God's green earth, basically. And I like that that we do get a lot of that process.
Yes,
like
definitely.
he's training up, he is getting this position, he is, sort of getting involved with the criminal underground, but only to work his way up the ladder there. I think it's all very it's very dialed into the process of it.
Yeah, I really like the methodical process of all of this. And that motivation is the thing driving not only the character, but the film, is knowing that this is as focused as it is, that there are these bad guys literally at the top of a tower that he has to work his way up. I find very, very compelling. And then seeing that happen across the first half of the film, and then he loses and has to build his way back up again. I was wondering what the structure was going to be, if it was just going to be him working his way up the entire time, but I like that there's that fall from grace and he has to like regain his confidence and rebuild his body and focus back in. I thought that was a great structure for the film, but I do think it causes a sag in the middle, because
I get you.
We get a 1/3 of the way in action sequence that is one of the main action sequences of the film. The cops show up, he tries to kill the guy, he fails, he escapes. There's this whole running across the tops of the houses sequence, and I thought that was great. And then I like the sequence where he's in the temple and he's like connecting with the people around him and he's building himself back up. I think it's good from a concept perspective, but I think that it loses so much energy that I was like, what is happening now? Because I think it feels a little bit out of place, and maybe it was just the disconnect, as you were saying, between what I thought the trailers were selling and the reality of the film. But again, the character work and the writing is there, but I don't think it buoys up enough to where I'm like, oh, I just want to see these characters talk.
Sure.
Because the characters are talking, but what they're saying is not particularly interesting, and I only sort of know the main character because he's a very quote unquote one note guy. He's very focused.
He's driven by his revenge, his need for revenge. And what I sort of feel about the characterization, the vagueness of it, I guess you could say, is that this film is obviously very dialed into being a mythological kind of story.
That's true.
We open on Bobby Kidd's, Dev Patel's character's mother, basically telling him the story of Hanuman, who thought the sun was a mango, went up to go grab it, and was justly punished by the gods. And so from that standpoint, it's priming you that this is sort of a myth, I think, and that's why I think that the character stuff works from that perspective. That obviously, Dev Patel is a stand-in for this Hanuman figure who is trying to ascend to a point but is being punished. It's also very socioeconomic from that standpoint. Yeah, and I think that the political themes are actually the strongest creatively aspect of this film, because I was really not expecting there to be so much stuff about... what's the word when... Class conflict.
Class conflict was like rich people moving in and pushing
gentrification.
It's really about gentrification and then also police brutality and corruption. And I think that all these things tune in very well, especially when the first third of the movie is not actually really focused on that, because you don't really know who this guy is, you don't really know what the situation is, but you hear on the radio things about police brutality, and in the background the TV playing things about the religious figure that's building up this commune.
It's all environmental.
And I like that environmental storytelling where it builds it up slowly, and then when you realize, it's not even almost until 2/3 of the way through the movie that Shakti, the sort of
religious celebrity,
the religious guy, is even shown really.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he becomes more of a force. And I think the balancing of that is interesting. I don't think it plays out all the way, because I would have maybe wanted to have seen a little bit more between Shakti and the literal governmental political figure that he's got on his side, that is kind of pushed.
The presidential candidate.
He's very much pushed aside, and I thought that this conflict about it happening on Diwali and having the political election happening, I thought that was going to be focused in on a little more. That's pushed to the side. So I think there's a lot of ideas set up, and I think that it ultimately does pay off in terms of making this a more politically and thematically rich world and story. But it's definitely not brought to full fruition.
Well, and one of the social, economic, cultural themes that Dev Patel is playing with here in the story, and it ties into the dip that you feel that this film takes, is his training in the middle of the film. He is sort of taken in by this excised community of transgender sort of rural a community basically who have been excised and who are eventually going to be pushed out further by Shakti. And so they take Dev Patel in as like basically this warrior, and they tell him that they used to be a society of warriors too. They worship this god who is like half man, half woman. It ties in this theme that is very obviously pertinent nowadays. And Dev Patel has said that this film is really a story for the downtrodden, the people who are being sort of excised by cultures across the world today, and makes them like a really cool, badass sort of training sequence for him, where he is.
It's really good training sequence.
It's really, he is sort of being trained to time his punches to make them more rhythmic, because what I really enjoy about his characterization in the first half is that you feel that he is just raw, just a nerve of rage, essentially. He is not refined in any means, and that's why he fails. He has to go through this training process to be more focused, to be more precise in his strikes and in his goals and everything, and so he can go on to succeed. And I think that's what that community provides him. And also they show up in the third act fight sequence to be like a badass sort of masked in costume fighting force.
I think that all is actually one of the best parts of the film. Those characters are not really fleshed out at all. They're kind of just like background stuff, but the idea of them, the group of them, the bond that they have together, and they're like smiling and laughing and like sitting around the fire and watching him train and like cheering him on and be like, whoa, when he takes his shirt off. There is a sense of community there that I've really appreciated, and also the themes of police brutality and trans identity, like not expected to be in this film at all, and I thought handled very well and felt very empowering by the end. And watching them come in and wreck shop and is really satisfying. And they have like these flashy dresses on and these masks. I'm like, ooh, that's cool imagery.
They're all wearing they're like scythed and knife weapons and everything.
And the imagery is another thing this movie really does have it going for it. I think that the cinematography is great. I thought the editing was great, especially in the sort of montage sequences where we're cutting between a lot of things, and we're getting quick insert shots of a faucet running or someone hitting a gong, and I thought that those insert shots really made the film feel very kinetic. And I will say that the editing, I think, does falter in one area. And I think that it does undercut the action and the choreography quite frequently. This is very much the problem that people have with like Winter Soldier, where it's like cutty around.
I get you.
There was a lot of times where I'm like, look, Dev Patel, great actor. I'm sure he's very confident in his choreography skills, but something about the choreography and the editing was not allowing the choreography to shine. It was a lot of cutting before punches and cutting away and going back and forth. And so there were few moments where the camera was pulled back and we were watching like kind of like Sifu style like flow between the people. I'm like, that is really cool. But so many of the sequences I thought were very cutty aroundy and like shaky cam and like up in someone's face. I'm like, this is not letting the energy and the preciseness of this shine. I think the shaky camera work in the action sequences is really, really distracting and didn't allow me to get into the flow that I was really, really hoping to find.
See, I didn't feel in any case the cutting on the action, like I didn't feel any of that like cutting on punches or anything like that.
By the way, I'm not saying all the time. I'm saying
I get you.
Too much of the time.
I get you.
Because some of the time when it's not cutting on action is some of the coolest shit in this movie. Is especially in that like kitchen sequence where he's picking out the pan and throwing it. Bing, 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 bing. I'm like, that's really good.
As for the shaky cam, I think that shaky cam has gotten a bad rap, especially coming off of like the Bourne series, which people are like, you can't even see what's going on. Like, I think that can be an issue, but I think there's also a time and a place for like shaky cam sort of moments. I think this film does implement them quite well. When we are in very obviously like these slums essentially, where we have very tight, compact hallways where we're sort of displaying through the cinematography how we are like bouncing off of walls and having to bob and weave between all these different obstacles and people who are attacking us and everything. It doesn't have, maybe this film obviously doesn't have like the budget of a John Wick film or the experience of making 4 John Wick films where we can do like a Hotline Miami top-down camera kind of thing. So I think for where this film starts out and the talent behind it, the directorial debut of Dev Patel, his first action role, it's really good, I think.
No, and I don't want to undersell it.
Of course.
I think this is very impressive as a debut. But to me, in some ways, with the editing, with the dip of energy in the middle, the pacing feeling a little weird, it does feel like a debut to me.
Sure.
I'm not as wowed by the consistency and quality of this as I was by Creed 3 last year, which I thought was a much stronger directorial debut. But still, holy shit, they made a really focused, really creative, very distinct movie, and that can't be undersold. Yeah. This is a good movie, and I was engaged and entertained for the vast majority of it. I just think that there are some flaws that I was like, I was hoping for this. I was hoping to come away from this like a 9 out of 10. Like, oh, dude, Monkey Man.
Love Monkey Man.
Because frankly, I thought the trailers were one of the best trailers of the year.
Yeah,
I don't think the movie quite hits those like pure energy, like blood pumping.
Well, yeah, because the trailers are all just like we're stitching together action sequences from across the film.
Yeah, but the film does stray away from that in quite a few of its sequences. And the final thing I want to say is I do think that a big part of my disconnection from the writing and sort of the story of this film is I think the side characters are like basically non-existent. There's this this woman who is like a prostitute at the tower that he talks to a few times. There is the guy who works there that's kind of a drug dealer or something.
Alfonso.
Is that his name?
I think so.
Okay. He's there, but like, and the female boss of the tower, and the
Queenie,
the captain, and and the religious guy Shakti. They're all like stereotypical characters. They're not particularly well fleshed out. He doesn't like really build a bond with any of them. The closest is who you call Alfonso. I don't know if that's actually.
I'm pretty sure it's his name. Let me check.
Who they kind of have a little relationship back and forth, and I think that's maybe where the movie feels at its best. But otherwise, it's a very isolated movie, and I think that is intentional. But there are enough side characters present to him where I'm like, I wish that I learned a little bit more about these people. I wish I knew a little bit more about their motivations. There are things planted, but I don't think that they're brought to fruition, especially in the climax, which is so focused on him going through the tower and killing people, that some of these storylines I don't think come completely to fruition.
Yeah.
So
no, and I get that. And for me, it all circles back around to what this film is doing from like making a mythology, essentially. Sure. Like it even directly kind of says that in this puppet show thing where after he gets the Monkey Man dust blown in his face and has this flashback moment where like it's a tale as old as time, and the Demon King, and the princess that is captured, and everything. That's like fair enough. Yeah. I think it's very much operating on that sort of plane, and I think it very much works, and that's why I really enjoy what Dev Patel is doing here, making his film distinct, making it feel unique to him and his experiences, and obviously the experiences of, Indian Hindi people, whatever you want to say. I actually did see that, I'm sure, I don't know if it's exclusively an Alamo Drafthouse thing, but they are showing this film entirely with Hindi subtitles as well.
Interesting. Is the film... Oh, with subtitles?
Subtitles,
okay.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, sure.
Which is cool. And it's really playing to the community and the people that its film is about.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why I really enjoy it. I'm going to give this thing an 8 out of 10.
I'm gonna go a little bit lower. I'm gonna go a 7.0 out of 10.
7.0.
1 point lower. But it's a good movie. It's a very good movie.
Absolutely good.
It's a great directorial debut. It feels very unique. It's just the best news ever. Yeah. That this was rescued from going straight to streaming.
Yes.
Because I would have liked it a lot less.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing also about the other film that we saw this weekend. Yeah. The First Element, which was supposed to go straight to Hulu.
Yeah.
I was just watching both of these in the theater. I was like, God, it's so much better to watch a movie in a theater.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for us, as we go to theaters a lot, it just feels like someone cares.
Yeah,
frankly.
Exactly, yeah.
And obviously Dev Patel cared, but having Jordan Peele come and care way more than Netflix executives, give this a marketing push, familiarize ourselves with it, hype ourselves up for it, really worked to get my butt in the seat.
Absolutely.
And my butt will be in any seat that Dev Patel is on the screen of.
Yes.
But this was a really fun time, so thanks for joining me.
No problem, Tucker.
Monkey Man.
Monkey Man.